We're going to move now to our blockchain session related to better supply chain and sustainability. And for that, we have mostly a remote panel with one in-person speaker. Let me introduce our in-person speaker first. He is from here in New York, and he knows so much about food. You're going to hear all about it. He's the managing partner and CEO of a great organization and company called the Food Institute. Please welcome to the stage, Brian Choi. And we're going to bring to our virtual stage 3 panelists. Well, one is the CEO and co-founder of Queen of Raw. She'll tell you about Stephanie Benedetto, and her CTO and co-founder Phil Derasmo. And many of you know him from the BSV community, the co-founder and CEO of UNISOT from Norway. Please welcome Stephan Nilsson.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Everyone looks so good today. Let's start by asking people to introduce themselves and what they do. Let's start with you, Brian, and tell us about the Food Institute.
Thanks, Jimmy. So the Food Institute is a food media company. We aim to be the Bloomberg of the food industry from a news, data, and trends perspective. And my background is in investment banking and private equity, and I took over in 2020.
Yeah, and you have members, right? Or
we have members, we have subscribers, we have advertiser sponsors. So we try to provide the best in-class content and education for our members.
Yeah, and as we'll talk about, they've been interested in blockchain technology.
Yeah, absolutely.
Stephanie and Phil, tell us what the Queen of Raw is. And is that you?
Hi, everyone. My name is Stephanie Benedetto, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Queen of Raw. We are enterprise SaaS software with an integrated marketplace that helps everyone from Fortune 500 to startups buy and sell their unused textile waste, keep it out of landfill, and turn what would be pollution into profit. And I come from a family background of over 100 years in fashion and textiles, so this is very much near and dear to my heart. How can we build solutions leveraging blockchain and machine learning that are better for people, for planet, but also for profit?
Fantastic. And Phil, tell us about your role with Queen of Raw.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks, Jimmy. I'm the CTO and co-founder at Queen of Raw. And similar, my background, I had family over the textile industry as well. So when Stephanie approached me and told me about this issue, I was kind of surprised that, 2 decades later, after, seeing, firsthand how there was lots of waste over in the process, that it was still going on. And not only was it still going on, but it was a global issue to the tune of, at the time, over $120 billion a year. And now it's grown to over $250 million a year of textile waste around the world.
Stephan, let's go to you in Norway. I'm still waiting for my invitation to visit you in Norway, by the way, Stephan. So why don't you tell us about UNISOT generally, and in particular, seafood chain. Many BSV people already know about it, but give us a brief overview and what's the status of your development.
Sure, Jimmy. You're always welcome to Norway at any time here, so that's not a problem. So my name is Stephan Nilsson, so I'm the co-founder and CEO of UNISOT. UNISOT is a supply chain sustainability platform as a service. And on that platform, we are then providing industry solutions, like you mentioned, seafood chain for the seafood industry. We are also providing solutions for verifiable accounting and sustainability reporting, thanks to turbulentary accounting technology.
Okay, fantastic. Now let's go to Brian. Brian, let's talk about the food industry, seafood and other things. And I know you've had Stephan and I on webinar to your group. What are the reasons and use cases you're seeing food companies being interested in blockchain technology?
Well, I think for blockchain, there's still a lot of misinformation out there about blockchain. So when you talk to food industry executives about blockchain, they immediately think about cryptocurrencies, and the natural evolution is towards payments, right? So that is the one area where we're seeing more and more news flow. A lot of companies exploring using different types of cryptos as a form of payment, in addition to Visa and MasterCard. And so I think that's the first stage. I think as the industry evolves, and I would say in general, the food industry has somewhat lagged behind other industries like oil and gas, like the automotive industry, in applying different types of new technology. But eventually, I see the application of blockchain going into the accounting area, into the finance and operations area, in data management area. And this is really where I think education has to be front and center about educating these industry executives about the pros of using blockchain technology. And your and Stephan's involvement in our webinar last year really, I think, helped a lot of the industry executives think about blockchain as something other than cryptocurrency, gambling, and actually some really good use cases of implementation within their companies.
Fantastic. Now we're going to go to Stephanie and Phil, and I've got some slides to show, so to illustrate to the audience, what your platform looks like. Why don't you tell us about Queen of Raw and how you're using blockchain technology? And I've got a screenshot here of your website with an example of what you have.
Sure, absolutely. Well, first and foremost, we started off as a marketplace. As you can see, that's one of the pages from our marketplace, showing you how we had all this excess textile around the world, and these amazing creative designers found great new uses for it. And I mean, this is perfectly great, material that sometimes it's still on the wrapper on a full roll, and not, hasn't seen the light of day yet. So it's like, to go and give it this new life and find purpose for this rather than being burned or buried and just collecting dust in a warehouse. So we started off with this marketplace solution, and just from my past, we always created stuff as a transaction engine, kind of in the middle of all the business processes, and put all your business logic over into that main transaction engine. And this way you can go and make, if you want to make an app with it, if you want to go and create an API, it was always in the center. We quickly learned that integrated engine was something that everyone in our industry could use. Because when we first started, this is a track and trace supply chain solution for managing excess textile inventory, the resale and repurposing of that inventory. And when we first started, we were like, well, let's solve for this problem locally first. And then we'll scale up and start, bringing on one country here, one region there, around the world. But let's get it right locally first. Well, we quickly found out that was not the actual case or the way to actually solve this problem, because it was a global issue. It was happening all around the world. The supply chain was everywhere, basically. If the materials, the factories, the designers, the businesses were everywhere around the world. So you couldn't just say, I'm just going to go solve for it in New York or even in the US. You have to go and involve everyone around the world. So that's when we decided, okay, and I was looking back at, what do we do on Wall Street? On Wall Street, you had data aggregation. You're bringing data in from multiple data sources. How do you go and solve for that? Well, we controlled all the systems, so we were able to ensure the data integrity within our networks. But that was not the case here. We were working with folks from all around the world. Enter blockchain, perfect solution. You can collaborate. You can go and ensure the integrity of the data. You can go and ensure the integrity of the network, and you have, the immutability of the data and the overall workflow process. So that's how we came about using blockchain.
Got it. And I know now you're not using the BSV blockchain, but I know we're talking to you to educate you, and maybe you'll consider adding some functionality in the future with us. Stephanie, here's an example of some of the textiles that were unused and are now being offered for sale on your marketplace. Tell us how this works and what's the impact you're seeing in achieving sustainability goals for the apparel and fashion industry.
You bet. And much like that B word, blockchain, right? That S word, sustainability. It means so many things to so many people, right? For us, we are on a mission to solve the world's water crisis. And little known fact, but textiles and fashion, by some accounts, is the #2 polluter in the world of clean water globally. It sits behind oil and agriculture, which it also uses a portion of. So this is, massively damaging, but in that there's an opportunity, right? It literally means that fashion and textiles, if we rethink business models and leverage technology to solve these problems, can literally solve the world's water crisis, right? And Phil mentioned every single year, it's now grown through COVID pandemic to $288 billion a year and growing of unused textiles that sits in warehouses collecting dust or gets burned or sent to landfill. And that's why we focused on waste as a resource. Our enterprise customers can sell this waste today, free up that very costly warehouse space, turn what would have been pollution into profit, and then put all that money back into doing good work in their supply chain. And in our partnership with MIT, we track to the product the water, the toxins, the carbon emissions, and the dollars saved. And to date, we've actually saved well over 1 billion gallons of water, and we're just getting started. It's actually enough clean water for 1.4 million people to drink around the world for 3 years. So I say that because never doubt that the actions that you take can't change the world.
That's awesome. That's awesome to hear and be able to have a measurable impact. You know, Brian, it probably wouldn't be that effective for perishable foods, but can you see a system like this being useful to avoid, waste of food in your industry?
Absolutely, right? So, in the food industry, there's been a massive shift into the whole ESG platform. So sustainability, governance, and more and more, not only companies, but consumers are demanding to know exactly what ingredients are in their product. They want to know where it comes from. They want to know that the work conditions of the farmers and whoever, that are working the fields are companies that abide by, the UN Sustainability Development Goals, right? And so, absolutely, this is a huge application. It's going to take a while, right? Only we've started to see a shift into the major companies like Danone and Pepsi and Coke start to apply it, and there is going to be a trickle-down effect, definitely. So not only are corporations implementing these sort of systems, but also investors are demanding it. And I think this is where blockchain can really be helpful in making sure that everything is transparent and easily verifiable, right? And so that's this absolutely. I love what Stephanie is doing, and so big proponent of it, and I think huge application over the next 5-10 years in this space.
Yeah, and what we'll need are companies building applications that these food or apparel, textile companies can use. So for that, let's turn to Stephan, and we're going to show some slides for him to help us walk through what UNISOT does and how it delivers some of the capabilities Brian says are needed. Stephan, tell us about UNISOT and what you do.
Yeah, so UNISOT is solving the problem that we have in global supply chains today, and that is the problem of data silos. Every company are collecting tons of data, but they stay in the company. There is no good platforms around today to actually exchange information between companies, and that creates a lack of understanding, a lack of view, and a lack of information and up-to-date information, so that company becomes less efficient because they simply don't have the information on what's coming or what's happening in their supply chain. You are still having this problem today that every company only have one tier up and one tier down information. You get information from a supplier and you give information to a customer, but you just have that closed view. And that is exactly what we are trying to solve, or what we are solving with our supply chain sustainability platform. But we also see that not only in supply chain and the physical things, but also financial. So that's why we have the Addendum solution, where we're also looking into and helping with the economic and financial information. And on top of that, as we mentioned here, the ESG, since we have this complete overview of the supply chain, we can now securely collect and store information and verify information that is also about environmental, social, and governance information.
Yeah, so let's take a look at this. Obviously, you both mentioned the UN Sustainability Development Goals. Here's a snapshot of what they are. These have become very important to big enterprises these days, and your platform tries to do that. And this is one of the videos from your site talking about how you get everything from sea to farm with the life cycle assessment. Talk us through what's happening here.
Yes, so the life cycle assessment module is a module where you can actually register and monitor the input in a process, the output of a process, and the waste from that process. And we can do that in every single step. And by doing that, you can also see and act on these information. You can actually see where you have your problems. You can see where your waste is coming from. And you can also, by having this whole view of the supply chain, and you can now start recycling, and you can actually get true information about the things that you're recycling, where they're coming from, where they have been used, what is the original of them, what do they contents of them, and so on. So that's what we see in the LCA module here.
Got it. And here's a snapshot of what your app looks like. There's a consumer app too. Tell us how that works quickly.
Yeah, so to be able to implement this very quickly and easy for company, we have something we call zero barrier of entry. So in comparison to many other blockchains, it was mentioned here, Hyperledger and so on, they're only targeting the big companies. You have to go together in a consortium, and you have to create your own blockchain, your private blockchain for that consortium. But what we are offering here is for every actor in the supply chain, from the smallest farmer or fisherman or carpenter, they can start by just using the app to register information, to register temperature, locations, and so on, and actually start earning money by reporting this information that are valuable to other actors in the supply chain. So that's what the app is for manual entering, and also for a first proof of concept can be done very, very quickly by starting using just the apps. But then the next steps will be to integrate the ERP system, to integrate the production system, to integrate IoT sensors, and so on.
Great. All right, let's go back to Brian. So Brian, I know it's not your job to tell your constituents, what blockchains to use, but I'm curious, what are the issues you're hearing about as they explore blockchain technology? What to use, Hyperledger, permissioned chain versus a public chain such as BSV, because I know you follow BSV and you're quite aware of what our capabilities are. What are you giving in terms of advice to direct your constituents?
Yeah, so for many food companies, the concept of utilizing a blockchain for supply management and applications is extremely foreign, right? So most businesses rely upon the traditional kind of SAP and Oracle, the big guys, right? And the issue is they all use those same systems, right? Yes. So to introduce a new type of blockchain, it's going to be a huge hump for them to really understand and apply it. But I think in areas where, especially, I'll just bring one example. So in the food service distribution space, you have the three largest, US Foods, Cisco, and PFG. And Stephan made a really excellent point when he was talking, is like, there's not a lot of transparency into the movement of product, the price of product. And the issue is a lot of middlemen are taking advantage of that. So they're because of that lack of information, they're able to take additional spread that in an environment where everything is transparent, the cost of products will go down. And ultimately benefit the consumer. So, I think it's ripe for disruption. So I challenge and also invite many of the food companies, and not only within the Food Institute, but also in the food industry as a whole, learn the technology, understand the benefits of using technology. I'm not saying that blockchain is going to completely transform or will replace what is currently existing, but it could supplement and potentially even make certain types of operations more efficient, more transparent. It's better for the company, better for the consumer.
Do you have a sense about whether a public ledger would be more effective for the food industry than a permissioned one?
Well, I think the public ledger, I like it because it provides not only multiple players to be able to utilize it, right? In certain instances, I do think a private ledger can make sense. So let's say, let's take another industry. You take a look at the automotive industry. OEMs, other equipment manufacturers, work very closely with certain automakers, right? So the level of trust is already there. right? So we're talking like they've built relationships 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And so they're comfortable using, and they're not going to share that. They don't want to share that because a lot of time and investment went into that relationship. But let's shift over to the food service distribution. There's not a lot of trust, right? There's multiple players. Right. And so, especially in those types of cases, like, I think this could be transformative.
Phil, let's turn to you. Obviously, as the CTO of Queen of Raw, have you run into any scalability issues with your blockchain platform, and how are you looking to deal with that in the future as hopefully your own business scales?
Sure, absolutely. Thanks, Jimmy. So definitely there is a technology barrier. The businesses we work with, they are focused on trying to get the best finished product they can out to market to get it to their consumers and then sell through on those goods. So the technology kind of like for this track and trace is a little bit of an afterthought in many cases, specifically when you're talking about the raw materials and the excess inventory that's left over, because they're on to the next big thing, on to the next what do our customers want? Well, customers more and more now are starting to care about what's going on behind the scenes, what's happening to the environment, what does their purchase mean? So what we've been doing, and that's where our sweet spot is, are that centralized transaction engine for the business rules that we've created. We've made that available to other folks so that they can be part of our global network. And part of that also, we're needed to get people up and running initially, have them have the tools they need to go and interact with the blockchain, with our private blockchain that will grow over the years and become more public transmission across public chains. So you'd have a syncing between private and public chain data, and have the data syncing back in the reconciliation of that data, so you're sure that the data hasn't been changed and the integrity is still there. But it's lowering the bar for entry is really important with the technology. Having folks, where data is available out there that maybe it's already being submitted to a specific location, whether it's through its shipments or customs or whatever, where it's readily available, get the data from there, put the information into the blockchain, and have that immutable receipt and data in there so that it can be checked back to make sure, oh, this is real. And then where possible, there's the other players also that have their own chains and to communicate with them. But definitely, that's our sweet spot, providing these tools so that people can get up and running quickly.
Stephan, let's go to you. We know, of course, UNISOT's platform uses the BSV blockchain. Why don't you take a moment and explain to Stephanie and Phil why you chose BSV and what are some of the things you can do uniquely on it that you can't do elsewhere, why they should consider it?
Yeah, so I've been working many years, 20 years in the enterprise environment as an SAP integration architect. And I realized that to build a platform as a service that are enterprise worthy, then we need a blockchain that is also enterprise worthy. So we need a blockchain that can scale. That's really, really important. We need also a blockchain that is secure and stable, and not least, of course, it has to be cost efficient and energy efficient as well. And I've been looking to all blockchains available out there, and I only found one that actually fits that narrative, and that is the BSV blockchain.
Stephanie, let's go to you. One of the things we believe here in the BSV world is that you can use blockchain, and particularly if you can scale it, to not just collect data, but to monetize data down to even micro levels, right? And actually allow companies, textile companies, or even consumers to monetize their data. How do you foresee that shaping what you could do in the future?
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest challenges, we're talking about scalability, right, to sustainability, is that for so long it wasn't seen as scalable solution, right? And we're here to challenge that notion. We started Queen of Raw as a marketplace, as you heard, for the buying and selling of unused textiles. But if you think about it, that's just kind of slapping a Band-Aid on a problem. How do you get to the root of the problem and figure out and understand, why do I have all this waste? Where does it come from? What are the product attributes associated with that waste? Who does it go to? And then what happens to it at end of life? Those are all touch points that we can connect the dots with using our track and trace tools and communicate that to all of the stakeholders who touch that good in the supply chain, all the way down to the end consumer, and directing to that end consumer the impact they have by their purchase, but also then what to do with it at end of life. Those are also touch points that a brand or retailer, right, or any company can engage in and actually increase their brand loyalty and connect again with that consumer. And I think that kind of gamification and loyalty of impact on a blockchain record is so powerful and so important. You scan that QR code and know at point of purchase the impact that you have and be incentivized for those good actions. Those are all monetization touch points. And for a brand or retailer, gives them that record, that proof that they can speak confidently about the good acts they took and have backup for their ESG reporting. And that's going to be critical with all the changes in the laws going forward. I'll just end with one figure. One of our enterprise customers saw 3 times the conversion rate in their online direct-to-consumer business just by talking about the good work they were doing with waste. So that's how blockchain really can have a massive economic impact.
Great, blockchain for good. Stephan, can you tell us just very quickly an example of the types of micro levels of data you can collect about fish, for example, in its supply chain process?
Yeah, so that's one very important thing when you look at a blockchain solution and you want to make the case for monetize information is that you have to be able to do nano transactions. So we want to be able to collect like one temperature or one weight, one location, and put that on the blockchain and put a value on that. And by the nano transactions, by the very, very low transaction fees that we have in the BSV blockchain, we can now enable company to start monetizing that information. So if I have information about the location and the weight, I can now sell that to other actors in the supply chain. They can subscribe to that information. And all of that can then be done on the blockchain and very cost efficiently as well.
Yes, location of the fish at a certain point in time, the weight of the fish, and even the temperature, right, which has value, for example,
yes.
for freshness. Brian, how do you foresee, members of the food industry being able to use that if that kind of data capability to that granular level was available and monetizable?
Yeah, I think there are many applications. The one that comes to mind is, a lot of consumers, they have certain types of allergies, and, every ingredient has to be monitored, right? And so, even for a consumer application to know, so, okay, you're buying a certain type of granola bar, and to be able to know what's going in there, make sure that it's clean, it's organic, it
gluten-free,
yeah, right? That is tremendous information, right? And so, there's a lot of class action lawsuits where,
many.
They're getting sued for millions of dollars, right? And so to have that level of data accessible to consumers so that they can verify, they know everything that they're putting into the body is good for them. Just that one example alone can, affects millions of people, not in the United States, but, hundreds of millions in the
big business model out there for entrepreneurs. Think about it. All right, let's talk quickly to wrap up about environmental sustainability certification. This has been mentioned before. I'll go to you, Stephanie. How do you foresee blockchain technology being able to be used in your industry to certify that, for example, textiles or a garment someone buys has achieved sustainability goals?
Well, exactly to what we were just talking about with food, right? With the clothing that touches our skin and our loved one's skin 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, knowing and understanding that what it's made of, where it came from, and that it's safe, right? To be touching our body and our skin is critically important. And there are tons of amazing certifications out there, but how many people actually read the label of the goods they get, right? And how many people, when they read the label, actually understand what it says? Well, the quick hand answer is don't read. If you read the label and you don't know what the ingredients are, you can't understand any of the words, then it's probably not something you want touching your skin. But the good news with blockchain and where we're going in the future is down to that exact product level. As I mentioned, being able to scan that QR code and seeing the record and the proof that this is organic, certified, was made here, and delivered right to you. That gives you trust and matters so much, especially to the millennials and Gen Zs who have the power of the purse in understanding that it's safe, that it has meaning, and that they're making a difference while wearing it. So the movement around certifications is critically important, but actually being able to back it up and verify it, that's what we need to be able to do at point of purchase.
Phil, do you have anything quickly to add on that about how it would be implemented from your perspective at a technology level?
Not much more than basically, as Stephanie was mentioning, to put all those constructs over into our business logic where they are, and to have that basically, we have a controlled environment. So a controlled environment with all of the data that you're able to go and access and verify on the chain to show you that that this workflow did take place in a certain fashion with the certain steps, and that the properties associated with each step are immutably what they are, and that you have that verification. So it's it's the control, being able to control the integrity of that data is definitely key here, and to showing it and having it be auditable.
And Stephan, we'll end with you. Give the BSV community any updates on where you are with UNISOT generally and your customer development process.
Yeah, I can't tell you very much details, but we are in contact with a number of multinational companies and talking to them, and they are super eager after have been talking to other blockchain solutions. They realize that they are too expensive, too hard to do, and what we see with many customers is they actually are afraid of the technology and afraid of having to learn blockchain, and that is exactly what we are trying to prevent here. Our customers doesn't have to know anything about blockchain or crypto or anything. We are just supplying a solution to them, a sustainability solution to them. It happens to use blockchain in the background because that's the best solution, but our customer, they don't have to learn about blockchain. They don't need any blockchain expert at all, and they're paying in fiat and these kind of things. But yeah, back to your question about customers. Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't tell you anything, but hopefully we will soon have some very, very interesting announcements to do about our progress here.
Yes. Well, that's great, and it is a good reminder that Stephan, we didn't get to talk about this, but his platform, and I believe Queen of Ra's as well, integrates with existing ERP systems such as SAP, which makes it a lot easier for companies to onboard into the blockchain world. All right, with that, we will thank our panel, who's given us a very interesting conversation about how blockchain can be used not just for supply chain management, but to really help achieve the sustainability goals, which are critical to not just the UN, but many big enterprises around the world. Please give them a round of applause. Thank you. And I'll excuse Brian, and we're going to move on to our next panel. We're reordering a bit of the morning. Brian, we'll have you step off the stage, and I'll see you later. Thank you. You're making me hungry, just talking to you, thinking about food.